Hey guys, my name is Miska and welcome to Overwatch Central. In today's video we're going to be talking about reworks, hero reworks that have been happening throughout this year. The most recent ones, most in particular, but also some of the previous ones, just to kind of compare what's actually happened. Because before hero reworks we always have a lot of talk about what they're actually going to do, if they're nerfs or buffs and what's actually going to change. But after the fact we rarely check back in on what's actually happened. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So we're going to start off actually with Symmetra, because that's still a somewhat recent one. It happened in July, and it's one of those heroes where a lot of people don't know exactly where she's at. So I wanted to check up on Symmetra. Now Symmetra, if you don't know, was changed quite heavily back in the sort of June and July time. She went on the PTR, I believe the reworked version, in June sometime, and then went to the live client into competitive in July at some point. So the season started, and I believe she was actually disabled in competitive for the first few weeks, but then she was activated, and as you can see looking at this overbuff graph right here, the pick rate wasn't actually that incredible. It was bumped up a little bit but then dipped back down quite quickly, and the win rate actually was not really changed at all. It kind of stayed right around the normal weird sort of somewhat high win rate that she has because she's barely played, and when she's played she might do well because A, it's a person that specializes in Symmetra and actually does alright with the hero, or B, she's played in a very specific sort of situation on a very specific map and does okay in that situation. All in all, as you can see though, looking at the pick rate, just before the rework she was sitting at about 0.8 sort of percent pick rate, and then now afterwards is sitting at about 0.7%. So she's actually gone down in pick rate and not really gone up in win rate either, so not too much of a change there at all. Anyway, let's move on. Sombra, let's take a look at her instead. So Sombra we had sitting at about 0.45% pick rate before she got any changes, and then she got quite a few changes throughout the past few months, the past sort of 3 or 4 months or so, and there was quite a lot of talk about Sombra because the sort of infinite invisibility matched with, of course, the translocator changes and all that stuff. People weren't really sure where she was going to end up. So if we look at win rate and pick rate here, we can see that the pick rate was about at 0.4% up to about 0.5, fluctuating a little bit up and down, and the win rate was definitely below 50% most of the time, sitting at about 45 to 46%. Win rate fluctuating a little bit once again, basically a very niche hero before that, right? So what happened with Sombra after she was changed was that her sort of win rate and pick rate started fluctuating quite heavily, more than most heroes tend to do when they are changed. And while Sombra in particular didn't really end up having any changes either. She didn't really end up moving that much either. She moved up a little bit in win rate, but in pick rate it wasn't really anything too significant. She moved from about 0.4, 0.5 to up to about 1% or maybe 0.9 depending on the tier and the sort of situations. Definitely the maps and the comp and all of that stuff. There definitely are some Sombra mains out there, but she still is not picked that much. The rework definitely did something. It definitely changed the way the character is played a little bit, but it wasn't that big of an impact either. Anyway, let's move on to Pharah. Maybe she had a bit of a bigger change. So let's have a look at her pick rate, win rate, and just see how she did in the different tiers as well, of course. Pharah started off at a bit of a fluctuating win rate and pick rate once again, as she's kind of one of those heroes that is somewhat situational, but overall good in the hands of the players that really know how to play the character, right? Makes sense for a somewhat situational but not too situational hero. So her win rate was pretty stable, sitting at about 50% for most of the time, dipping down to about 49% a bit here and there. Her pick rate pretty much in that middle sort of tier of not quite super niche, but not really popular either. She was kind of always an off-meta pick in a way. So when she was actually reworked, put on the PTR, and then that went live, I think about October 9th-ish, she was picked a little bit more for sure. Her pick rate jumped from about 2.4 up to about 2.8-ish pick rate. And her win rate actually jumped up from about 50 to 51% win rate on average throughout all the tiers on PC, which is actually not that bad. In general, when a hero is picked quite a lot more because of a rework or so, and then still manages to maintain a positive win rate, and on top of that gain a little bit in win rate, it's usually a pretty good sign. So Pharah actually did alright, and it seems that more people in general are picking her more, at least a tiny bit more, and actually winning a little bit more. But the change is very minimal here. It had a bit of a positive impact, but it's just such a small change, it doesn't really matter too much. Finally, let's move on to Torbjörn. Now, Torbjörn's graph looks pretty ridiculous in terms of pick rate, so let's start with win rate instead. Before, he always had a bit of a higher win rate, much like Symmetra, because he was picked in very niche situations, and sometimes maybe even picked when the game was essentially already won, and it was just kind of a stomp either way. All in all, his win rate was pretty high, sitting at about 55 to 56% win rate depending on the situation. He was then reworked and disabled in competitive play for a while, but then enabled for the end of Season 12 and of course the start of Season 13, and his pick rate just shot up. As you can see right here, it went from about 0.4% all the way up to 1.7, 1.8-ish, which is quite a lot, but it's actually started dwindling ever since. So a little bit disappointing that it's not really stayed high at all. And on top of that, the win rate hasn't actually changed really at all. It's changed by about 0.5% on average, just not enough for it to really matter too much. And that's with about a month's worth of stats in competitive. A big rework that took probably quite a long time for Blizzard to make, and then that ending up not really having too much impact. Now, if you look at other heroes that had reworks and the impact of those, you have, for example, Mercy, who was dominating the meta for months and months upon end. That rework did so much for Mercy. You had the rework for Hanzo, which did quite a lot for Hanzo as well, at least for a while or so. He was nerfed fairly quickly, at least faster than Mercy for sure, but he was an extremely strong hero for quite a while. And this seems to be the general trend. Either a hero is reworked and all of a sudden they're doing incredibly well, and Blizzard have just somehow managed to completely mistune them and they just dominate the meta, or they kind of end up being a bit of a waste of time. So far we have these 6 recent, at least, hero reworks, 4 of which have not really ended up doing anything, and the 2 other ones not really ending up doing something positive. The Mercy meta was not something that anyone really enjoyed too much, not even really the Mercy players, I don't think, in the long run, because it meant that you just had to play Mercy every single game. You couldn't really play too many other supports. Hanzo as well, similar thing. You had to run Hanzo because of how incredibly good the character was. The character is still good, but just not quite as good, and this is the thing. All of these reworks just seem to have been not really a waste of time, I don't want to say, but almost a little bit pointless at the end of the day. They haven't really changed much in terms of pick rate, they haven't really changed much in terms of win rate, and most of them haven't really made the characters that much more fun to play either. 2018 has kind of been the year of the reworks, but was it all really worth it in the end? Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think about this, if it was actually worth it, what do you think about all of these reworks? But personally, looking back at the stats, I can't help but feel that Blizzard have kind of wasted their time a little bit, and that most of these reworks didn't really end up having the impact that anyone wanted. Maybe my opinion is a little bit controversial in a way. I'm not here to say that the developers are just wasting their time on whatever they're doing. I'm no game designer either. I don't know what to do or what to do sort of in terms of tuning with these reworks to make them better. I'm not sure how they could have avoided this, but I can't help but feel that a lot of these reworks and a lot of time that was put towards them didn't really end up having the impact that was expected. That's all for this video though. If you enjoyed it and you agree or whatever, feel free to leave a like. If you disliked it, then leave a dislike and just let me know why in the comments. I feel like this is a pretty important topic to bring up though, and I definitely feel like this is something that a lot of people just don't talk about. The reworks kind of happen, they're very hyped up, and then they go live and all of a sudden we just kind of get used to them and kind of forget about them. When the reality is that a lot of development time and a lot of thinking on Blizzard and the Overwatch developer teams and go into these hero reworks that don't actually end up having much impact. Alright, anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more Overwatch content, you know the deal. And I'll see you next time.